Battahl. Lying south of Vermund, this kingdom forgoes the woods and valleys of the north for dry desert canyons and isolated oases. With scorching hot days and freezing cold nights, the unforgiving Battahl climate is the real ruler of these lands, and she makes Vermund feel like the safe starting zone of a game in comparison. For this expedition, we've once again been joined by our guide, David, who flew in first class with Griffin Airways. We highly recommend taking the speedy offboarding option. The kingdom's people are almost entirely holed up within the capital, Battahl, with its own self-sufficient farms and industry protected from the dangers beyond. The city's people are a mix of humans and house cats, tied together by its rich, ancient culture. Their dwellings, stores and temples are beautifully carved into the canyon walls. They cherish art, music and fashion. And their beloved Empress leads her people in hypnotic daily rituals. Out in the desert canyons, however, the kingdom's lack of control is painfully clear to see. Settlements once home to the Battahl people have long since been overrun by lawless bandits. And as for the roads, well, they're even less safe than Vermund's. The kingdom did try to come up with another way of transporting its goods and people, but that turned out to have its own problems. It's not just the climate that's more extreme in Battahl. The harsh environment means that the creatures calling it home are tougher than in Vermund, with larger, stronger variants surviving here. For example, while the goblins are found all over Vermund, in Battahl the bigger hobgoblins are much more common than their hobbit-sized cousins. Another creature with more dangerous variants found in Battahl is an airborne one, with a particular species being an absolute menace of the roads, the Gore Harpy. Found all over the land from the western desert to the eastern coast, these winged bulls are the largest of the harpies and have the raw strength to show for it. While other harpies are capable of picking up humans, Gore Harpies will outright use people as living frisbees. Back on land, it's not all dust and rocks. Throughout Battahl are pockets of oases, which tend to hug the banks of the region's precious waterways. For one land-dwelling critter, these shallows are prized real estate worth fighting over. The asp. Just like other saurian species, asps can be found napping and lounging by the water's edge, basking in the Battahl heat. Unlike their cousins, however, a toxin radiates from the asp back, and they even lick their spears to coat them in the toxic substance, making them tricky foes to deal with. And it's not just the poison that makes asps formidable, it's their sheer numbers. They can quickly surround a target, so even for a guide as experienced as David, it was time to move along. Another Battahl Denizyn is not so easy to escape. Ooze. Commonly found near riverbeds, be they flowing or dry. No soul has ever spared their globulous wrath. Not even dragons. And as if their speed wasn't enough, ooze are also masters of the ambush, capable of leaving fields of destruction in their wake. For any sane victim faced with an ooze, there's simply no choice but to try and flee from their relentless chase. Out in the open, there's a larger inhabitant that technically isn't even wildlife, but it roams the land nonetheless. The Golem. These enormous constructs are powered by magic and are normally created to guard important areas or riches. For these golems, however, their masters are long gone, leaving them following orders from a time before anyone's living memories. So what might look like crumbled ruins to us, to the Golem is the only thing in the land worth protecting. In fact, if enraged, these previously lumbering giants will throw the most erratic, destructive temper tantrum that any toddler would be proud of. One might say old broken stones aren't worth losing your head over, but to the Golem, that's just another day in the job. It's good advice to watch your step in Battahl, because unlike the Golem, some of the region's other large residents are actually alive, and have an appetite to match their size. This particular product was manufactured by one of the land's most ferocious predators, the Chimera. A horrific 3-for-1 package deal. This beast has the head in front of a lion, a poison-spewing snake for a tail, and a goat's head that has somehow embraced the power of sorcery. Being a warrior, sorcerer, and a rogue all in one has obvious advantages, meaning for the Battahl food chain, few sit higher than the Chimera. Another rare predator found in Battahl isn't quite as legendary as the Chimera, but it's nightmare fuel all the same. The Garm. These huge hellhounds are comprised of pure muscle and fangs, and love to play by using people as tutors. Trying to flee probably won't get you very far, as not only are Garms fast, but they will happily launch themselves at prey like ravenous cannonballs. One of the few ways of escaping a Garm's chase is to feed it a corpse. So if you're lucky enough to find a fresh one within your vicinity, simply throw it in the Garm's general direction and hope that it quite literally takes the bait. Just like in Vermund, as night falls upon Battahl, the underworld awakens from its slumber. The undead fighters that prowl the darkness are dangerous enough to anything alive, but they pale in comparison to the skeleton lords. The ultimate undead warriors, they haunt the land's burial crypts and will challenge any explorer with unfaded battle skills. In another land known for its bonfire culture, these skeleton lords might be known as poise monsters, as they're capable of taking many blows without so much as flinching. Not to be outdone by a brainless swordswinger, there's an undead that ranks above even the skeleton lords, the Ancient Lich. Known first and foremost for their impeccable dress sense, they also just happen to be masters of sorcery. When not aura farming their foes to death, the Lich can even bind the dead to its will, bringing them back to life in an endless crescendo of rattling bones. It's not just the undead that like to play under the stars, as the rarest harpy species is a lover of the night, the succubus. While other harpies head to their nests as dusk falls, The succubus with its slender build and prim, iridescent coat is most at home when luring prey under a veil of darkness. As the sun rises again over Battahl, the first place to feel its warmth is the land's highest peak, Dragon's Breath Tower. Sitting upon the throat of the world, reaching this ancient temple is an arduous journey that few will ever make. For those that do, however, the view speaks for itself. At the base of the mountain lies the Worm's Blood Forest, and if one survives the bandits and roaming creatures, you might be tempted to follow the works of art that line the trails, but that would be a mistake. These intricate sculptures weren't carved from rock, but were instead produced by the stone-cold stare of the artist, Medusa. Once thought to be nothing more than a myth, it turns out she's very real, and she really doesn't like the company of others. David and the crew quite enjoy being able to move, so they respected the slithery introvert's wishes and quietly left her abode. To the east of the untamed wilds of Battahl is an island that the kingdom actually has some semblance of control over, with a well-guarded camp and a second site where the involuntarily employed work day and night. This is where the kingdom's efforts go to, instead of retaking the Battahli Desert. The island itself is volcanic in nature, giving rise to these wonderful basalt rocks. The island is known in other parts of the world as the Giant's Causeway, which is quite fitting given the size of the creatures here. One large resident is particularly territorial, the Gore Minotaur. These danger cattle are extremely agile despite their size, capable of quickly charging and leaping at foes. And if being gored by their giant horns wasn't enough to ruin your day, Minotaurs also carry a huge battle axe, and they know how to use them. Creatures like these are why the island's forts are guarded by some of Battahl's best troops. Rarely a day goes by without encroachment. Sometimes these raids can reach critical mass, with large numbers of creatures besieging the gates, held back by nothing but the bravery and skills of the Battahli guards.
My patience wears thin.
These battle-hardened troops will wake up tomorrow, fully ready to do the same thing again. Because as the saying goes, war never changes. We previously said that capturing footage in Vermund was the most difficult expedition that our team has ever set forth on. Well, that has now been one-upped. Between the extreme climate and the unshackled wildlife every 5 metres, filming in Battahl was nigh on impossible. From constant interruptions by overgrown pigeons, to dealing with deadly toxins on a daily basis, we quickly understood why the Kingdom of Battahl have all but abandoned their western territory. Just as in Vermund, we don't want to gloss over the realities of life in such an ecosystem, so here's a collection of clips from when we encountered technical difficulties.
Tide of battle tried to overwhelm us.
This brings our time in the kingdom of Battahl and Vermund to an end. Our guide David has been chased, battered and bruised, but his sacrifice was one I was willing to make for all of you. We aim to show the best of the wildlife here because they're not just creatures, they're characters. They're personalities with their own quirks and ways of life, and we hope we've captured that for safe viewing from the comforts of your home. If the lands of Vermund or Battahl were to ever be expanded, or if an ancient dungeon with new unseen critters were to be discovered, then we very well could be back. But for now, it's goodbye from us, and time for David and the crew to venture over the horizon to faraway lands. So who knows where they will document next.